One of the nuances of data science pertaining to large sets is the need to run queries and macros that can sometimes take hours to reach completion. And this is something that you'll likely encounter as you continue along your data science journey. Now, being away from the computer during the completion and towards the processing of this data limits you from being able to check the work product for errors during the process in which the particular code is being executed. Now, in this particular lecture, we're going to be talking about SAS macros, but this is equally applicable really to any situation, at least as far as the scenario I'm describing is concerned. But as it pertains to SAS and running macros through a long duration period where you won't be present or running them uh, overnight through the evening, there's a couple different tips and tricks that you should be aware of, things that will save you a ton of time and hopefully lead to a cleaner execution of the code and a more optimal utilization of your time as it applies to achieving the results which you find to be necessary. So let's start by talking a little bit about OBS. So what does OBS do? Well, let's say that you're working with a massive data set, not one that's, I don't know, 500,000 observation rows. Let's say you're working with a data set which is in the terabytes as far as scale is concerned. And you want to know if your particular code that you're running, whether it be for analysis or whether it be for some sort of report or output, whether or not that code is is functioning in a way that you believe is correct or is producing the correct result. The best way to do a quick test of your code without having to run it on the entire set as a whole is to use OBS. Now, what OBS allows for is we're using, by the way, our test one data frame, which we used in the macro example. What OBS is going to do for us is it's going to scan the first X number of rows and then produce a data set from the rows of the set which we specify in the set step. So in this case, we're interested in test one, and we want to create a new data set, test two, but we're only interested in the first 10 observations. That's why obs equals 10. So in this case, we'll get a new data set, test two, which will consist of these particular observation rows. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If this was obs equals 20, it would be 20 rows or 40, 40 rows, and so on and so forth. This is also useful not just for applying macros or applying analysis, but if you want to make modifications to the data set, say you read test one in as a CSV or um, external Excel file or whatever it was, um, but you didn't want to have to, potentially read it in again should whatever the code you're utilizing, make changes to the set that you find to be unwarranted. Well, this is a good way to avoid that. So this just allows you to create a smaller duplicate of the set that you're wanting to analyze. So let's go ahead and run this code. And as you can see, test two has been created, data frame test two. And that only consists of the first 10 observations. So go ahead and perhaps run your code on this bit of data here and see if it's to your liking. See if the changes, if you're changing variables or creating new variables, see if this is what you would like as far as the outcome of those modifications are concerned. And if so, you can then apply those modifications to the original set, test one. Or, perhaps maybe the macro, you want to see if the macro output is where the ODS output is being correctly created, but you don't want to run it on the full data frame because it's so large. This is a good way of doing. Of course, in that instance, you're going to want a lot more than 10 observations for your test. So in this case, we're reading in the first 10 observations, not the first 1,000 in any event. And this is from, fix this, from test one to create test 2. There we are. And code is in the video description, by the way, if you wanted to try this on your own. All right, now probably the number one error that's going to occur as far as user error or maybe system error is concerned that would prevent your macro from running correctly without you being present is what I'm about to pull up on the screen. And that is the SAS log window. So see this right here? This is log window full. And this will pop up and stop all execution, whether you're present at the machine or not. So let's say you're running a massive macro. Let's say this macro has to go, run, I don't know, maybe 180 or 190 times, or maybe more than that. And as it's running, it's creating various log outputs, right? Log outputs is what comes up here in the log window. So it's what's occurring in the log window. So eventually, once that reaches a certain point, the SAS log window will be full, and you'll get this message. You'll get this message here. And again, this stops all execution, so you're done. So any macro code that you wanted to have execute, once it fills up the log window, everything stops, and your attempt to optimize your time by having the macro run overnight is finished. Until you come and fill out this or select the particular option that you find to be suitable, code will no longer execute. So again, you're done. You'd have to select one of these options and click OK, and then the code would begin executing again. Does not solve the issue as far as optimization is concerned. So the best way I found to attempt to avoid this, or at least avoid it to some extent, is you want to put this following code. You want to run this particular code at the beginning of your SAS session. And if you do this, you suppress printing to the log. Now, here's the tricky thing about the printing being suppressed. You're only suppressing blue text from being printed to the log. So this is I'm trying to get the image for you all. This is the type of text which will no longer be printing to the log. So this will no longer be filling the log, and hopefully that wouldn't then solicit the log window from being presented and your code from ceasing to execute. However, this bit of code here does not stop green text from being displayed. Green text is warning text, or black text from being displayed. This could be debug text, or it could be text related to your macro. So you need to figure out a way to prevent this from cluttering your log as well. So run this before running your macros overnight. If you need to then change it back during the same session, you can run this bit of code here. But you'd want to run this code. Let's run this. Okay. And then as you'll see, no blue text was generated when we performed the data step, which we had previously performed. However, again, if there's warnings coming up, it's still filling up the window, and it could still lead to our log window full menu from preventing code from being executed. So a way to avoid this from happening is you want to probably try to slide this bit of code into your macro. So if you have a macro that's created, you might want to put this in as the last bit of code within the macro before you have the mend statement placed. And what this does is this clears the SAS log. So if you were to run this code or have this code execute within your macro, it erases all of the SAS log output. And so then if you have blue or if you have green text and black text, in addition to it being created, even though you're suppressing the blue text, it won't fill the log and it will not cause an issue as far as the uh, filling of the log is concerned in the log window to be displayed. Now, there might be instances also where you're concerned about filling up the output window or the results window. And to keep that from occurring, you want to run this code. Now, again, this might not always be the case. You might want to have results generated. But in most cases, if you're creating multiple reports using ODS, you probably want to have the results cleared in each instance of the report being successfully created with the macro and then being read out with ODS. So if that's the case, put this bit of code instead of this bit of code in your macro. And what this does is this not only clears the log, but also clears the results output window as well. All right. So with that, you should be able to hopefully optimize your utilization of macros in creating reports or creating analysis to be executed overnight or without you, the user, being present. So it's always best to try just running your macro or running your analysis, even if it's a giant data frame, once or twice with you being present. I mean, test it first using OBS, but then test your code, whatever it may be, once or twice on the full set. And if it is able to achieve the result which you find to be appropriate, then go ahead, make sure, all of the various options are enabled, and then run your code overnight. So I hope that you found this useful, even though this was a bit of an advanced topic. If so, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for stopping by and have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.